First of all, I want to thank BPW for this honor today. I want to tell you a little story. Today is the first day that I have met Sabrina. I read her letter in support of my nomination, and I was so touched because I know each year when I make the effort to go speak to Girls State that I'm addressing the leaders of tomorrow. And we've seen one of those leaders of tomorrow today. And Sabrina, your impressive accomplishments in the classroom, on the court, and in the community mean so much to me. And your letter and your being here today, she drove up from Boston, where she's working, really touched me. So thank you so much. Ever since I've learned of my election to the Maine Women's Hall of Fame earlier this year, I've reflected on the significance of this honor. And to be honored with Catherine Musgrave means so much to me. Catherine has come to meet with me many times over the years to give me a little advice, sometimes to straighten me out on something, but I have treasured our meetings. And she is truly a miracle, a force of nature. I also want to take a moment to recognize some of those who supported my nomination. Now, the full list, I'm happy to tell you, is far too long to read, but it reminds me of how lucky I am to be a Mainer and to have so many great friends. Mary, you are incredible. Mary put together a notebook that is literally this thick. She knows things that I don't remember about what I've done. And I thank you because I know we would not be here today but for you. Shelley and Jerry, Darlene, the other members of the BPW from both Fort Kent and from Caribou and all over the state. There are so many people who wrote in. My good friend Mary Adams, who also nominated me and is here today. There are so many others, and I thank you all. I'm very grateful for your being here, and I very much appreciate the video that Bill Cohen sent. That was the first time that I saw it, and he's such a great leader who is a source of inspiration to me. The list of inductees into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame, which since it was established 21 years ago, is an honor roll of Maine women whose achievements in every field of endeavor have enriched our state, improved the lives of Maine women, and inspired the generations to come. Two members of this distinguished honor roll have special places in my life, as has been mentioned. The first, of course, is my mother, Pat Collins. It was such a thrill to see her inducted into the Hall of Fame 6 years ago. Now, in case you're wondering why she is not here today, let me tell you something about my mother. Even at the age of nearly 83, she never fails to hear the call of duty. And today she is on duty in Baltimore as New England's only female delegate to the National Advisory Council of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And I think she'd forgive me for saying, but frankly, I think they need her advice even more than I do. I am delighted that my father, Don Collins, and my brother, Sam Collins, made the trip down from Caribou to be with me today. And I'm grateful that so many friends and members of my staff have also made the effort to be here as well. Mary was telling me over lunch that I have the best staff in the world, and she's right, and I feel so fortunate. The second Hall of Fame member who inspired me is, of course, the legendary Margaret Chase Smith. In 1922, at the age of just 25, she helped to found the BPW chapter in Skowhegan, and she was later elected the president of the Maine BPW. Of course, more elections and even greater accomplishments lay ahead for Margaret Chase Smith. She once told me that the support that she received from BPW members all over the state was critical to her very first election to the Congress. In fact, she told me she couldn't have won without that network of women all over the state. From the very first time that we met, when I was a high school senior, I have been inspired by her integrity, determination, and commitment to public service. Now, I'd like to devote the rest of my remarks today to the state of public discourse in this country and its implications for the effectiveness of government and, in a larger sense, for the functioning of society as a whole. We need a more civil tone in the public debate in Washington and throughout the country. Addressing the real concerns of our citizens should be the focus of each and every one of us who is privileged to serve the public. Unfortunately, achieving solutions is not the goal for everyone today. Rather, in Washington, too often the goal is to draw sharp distinctions and score political points, even if that means that the problems facing our country go unresolved. To be sure, tumult is inherent in democracy. As Thomas Jefferson once said, the boisterous sea of liberty is never without a wave. There is, however, a great difference between the waves of lively, informed debate that propel ideas forward and a tsunami of insult and false accusation that destroys everything in its path. I am uncertain of who it was who first described politics as the art of compromise, but that maxim, to which I have always subscribed, seems woefully out of fashion these days. Sitting down with those on the opposite side of an issue, figuring out what issues matter most to each side, negotiating in good faith, and attempting to reach a solution are actions often vilified by the hardliners on both sides of the aisle. I am certain that any historian of American politics would tell you that the degree of civility in Congress has ebbed and flowed over the years. At least we don't have one member caning another into unconsciousness, as happened in 1836 when Representative Preston Brooks of South Carolina flogged Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts on the Senate floor. But in modern times, I have rarely seen the degree of bitter divisiveness and excessive partisanship now found in Washington. The weapon of choice today is not a metal-topped cane, but poisonous words. During the last Congress, the minority party was increasingly shut out of the discussion. Even in the Senate, which used to pride itself on being the bastion of free and open debate, procedural tactics were routinely used to prevent Republican amendments and to curtail debate. And that, in turn, caused Republicans to overuse the filibuster because our only option was to stop a bill to which we could not offer amendments. We saw this unfortunate phenomenon last year during the consideration of the defense bill, which included language that would end the don't ask, don't tell policy. Now, I happen to support repealing don't ask, don't tell. My view is this: if individuals are willing to put on the uniform of their country, to be deployed to war zones like Iraq and Afghanistan, to risk their lives for the benefit of their fellow citizens, then we should be expressing our gratitude to them, not trying to exclude them from serving in the military. But I recognize that many of my colleagues did not see it the same way that I did. And they should have had the right to offer their amendments and debate the issue, even though I was going to vote against them and debate just as hard on the other side. Eventually, we introduced a standalone bill, a bipartisan bill that Joe Lieberman and I authored, and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the repeal of it finally passed by a vote of 63 to 31. But it almost fell victim to partisan political maneuvering that had little to do with the merits. There's another factor that has coarsened the public debate in Washington, and that is the emergence of the 24/7 news cycle and of networks that cater to individuals who are on one side of the political spectrum or the other. That has hardened the political lines and made compromise much more difficult. Members of Congress who have extreme political views now have an outlet for their rants, and arguably they make for much more interesting interviews than those of us in the colorless center. Now, there's another negative development that has contributed to the decline in civility. When I was a freshman senator in 1997, I remember Senator John Chafee of Rhode Island, as fine a gentleman as has ever served in the Senate, advising me never to campaign against those with whom I served, whether they were Democrats or Republicans. The Senate is too small a place, he counseled. Campaign for your Republican colleagues, go to states with open seats, but do not campaign against your Democratic colleagues. It will poison your relationship with them. And back then, most senators followed the Chafee rule, but that has changed. Now many senators enthusiastically campaign against their colleagues in their home states. And last year's elections show just how far the destruction of collegiality has progressed, with some members campaigning against incumbent senators in their own caucus by endorsing their primary opponents. Now, why does this matter? The fact is that these personal attacks in campaigns have detrimental effects that last long after Election Day. And the seemingly constant campaign cycle, aided and abetted by cable and radio shows whose ratings may depend on reaching small but highly partisan members of the electorate, coarsens the debate. Of course, I do not mean to suggest that civility requires us to accept the unacceptable. Good manners, graciousness, and avoiding undue offense must not prevent the telling of unpleasant truths. If they do, then we're left with nothing more than polite but meaningless discourse, devoid of passion and principle. When Senator Margaret Chase Smith, 60 years ago, went to the Senate floor to deliver her famous Declaration of Conscience, she did so not to demonize Wisconsin Senator Joseph McCarthy, but to denounce his actions. She certainly gave him great offense, but she spoke the truth about his tactics of ruining reputations, crushing free speech, and smearing his opponents. Telling the truth about Senator McCarthy's conduct in strong, straightforward, tough language was far more important than worrying about offending him. In contrast, consider the House member from my own party who interrupted President Obama's speech to a joint session of Congress in 2009 by yelling out, "You lie!" Or the House Democratic member whose contribution to the healthcare debate consisted of asserting that Republicans had a two-word plan: die quickly. These are decidedly uncivil acts, designed not to reveal truth, not to argue the merits of a position, but rather simply to cause offense. So where does this leave us? Students of American culture might ask whether incivility is strictly a Washington phenomenon or a reflection of changes in society at large. The question reminds me of the response that Senator Lowell Weicker once gave to an unhappy constituent who denounced him and his colleagues as a bunch of liars, thieves, and womanizers. Senator Weicker calmly replied, "Well, it is, after all, a representative form of government." I will not try to play sociologist and weigh in on this issue, except to note that there are indications that as a people, we are becoming less civil. Just witness the growing incidence of bullying in schools, the attack journalism on cable television, the use of the internet to smear people anonymously, and the popular appeal of so-called reality TV shows in which people are fired or voted off islands. I am more confident in asserting that even if Washington leads the nation in incivility, it is not likely to change until those outside Washington demand it. What gets rewarded gets done. And for those of us in Congress, re-election is the ultimate reward. Voting out of office or not electing in the first place those who put partisanship over progress, conflict over compromise, would create a very different legislative climate, one in which the objective is to solve problems, not just to try to score points. It may not be easy to feel passionate about civility and compromise, but it is easy to feel passionate about a vibrant, just, and prosperous America. To achieve that, however, we need to be passionate about electing members of Congress who not only work hard, but work together. A return to civility and a spirit of compromise must be driven by the voters, and it is not inevitable. To keep around those of us who bridge the partisan divide will require the energetic support of community leaders throughout America, including those in this room who want a less confrontational, more effective government in Washington. Helping ourselves out of this problem is going to take what it's always taken: hard work on the part of those who are committed to the future of our great country. A commitment to the future is what unifies the Federation of Business and Professional Women across this country. And it is the common thread that binds together the lives of those commemorated in the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. Thank you again for this very great honor, and thank you for your friendship. Thank you.